It's interesting. When you reach a certain age in your life, myself included, you realize that there's more behind you than there is in front of you. Okay, that's good. Except when you relate it to your finances, it's frightening. And what I'm talking about is that for so long, when we were working and we had the capacity to make money and we were running around and we were socializing and we had our kids and we were following them and, taking them to this exercise and to that game, we were just making money and life was good and life was going to go on. And, we just kind of gave money to people who would invest it, figured, they know what they're doing. And then all of a sudden you get to a point where you say, gee, I wonder, how am I doing money-wise? But it takes some event to stop you. Me, for example, and most women, to stop us and say, wait a minute, how much money do I have? There's always some outside thing, whether it's a divorce or whether being widowed or whether there's a pandemic or whether, you're forced out of your house, whatever it might be. And then you say, wait a minute, if I have less in front of my life than I have behind me, then I certainly can't make as much money in the future as I did in the past. I don't have the energy to make what I used to make. I may not be sought after in terms of, employment. And now we cannot afford to not know everything that's going on with our money. We cannot afford to be risk averse. So then we and you take someone like myself, I'll be totally honest with you. I had so much going on in my life. I was campaigning. I was a DA. I was running an office. I was prosecuting crime, giving speeches, and I'm on television, and socializing, and all the things we do as women, nurturing, taking care of our children and our mothers. And then one day you say, well, I have enough money to take care of myself. And it's scary. The 100-year solution is what stopped me in my tracks, because everything sounds pretty normal, right? Except it's not. You've got, we've got the stock market, okay? People call it the Wall Street casino for a good reason. And that is the people involved, at least the insiders for absolute, know more than we do. And then you've got the money managers and the stockbrokers and all those people who have to make their commission on your money. And in the end, we've seen it over and over again. The stock market comes down, it goes up. What makes me think that I'm smart enough to know when to cash out? And I'm tired of hearing people say, oh, this is a great value. Yeah, it's a great value if you jump out at more than what you bought it for. So then you say, okay, I'll do the money market. But the money market, basically, you make like no interest. It's almost an insult to you. You're not getting anything. And CDs and the tax implications, all that stuff is nowhere near as profitable and as reliable as a 100-year solution. And so I started looking and saying to myself, I need money that is going to have a compounded interest, which is wonderful, but money that I can also access in the event that I get a life-threatening illness or I need long-term care. Because let's face it, that's where we're headed. I mean, I don't know any Benjamin Buttons out there or Barbara Buttons. We're getting older and we're getting sicker. So if you can't rely on yourself and you can't rely on your own money, and you allow yourself to be taken advantage of by predators, and trust me, my DA days, I can point to a lot of them. Men you end up dating, women may be lonely, and these men have the answer. And some women look up to men and think, well, they're smarter when it comes to money. And then they give them their life savings, or they sign over a mortgage, or they do all the things that I could go on and on about that I prosecuted, where women were literally conned out of their life savings. You can't rely on the men either, or any of these managers, but you can rely on yourself. And the 100-year solution gives you the ability to know what's going on with your money. You can confront your mortality objectively, not be risk averse, where, they're going to say, oh, we'll make money. You can't. There's no magic bullet here. But the one thing that is important is that we now have the opportunity, I believe, to have a pot of money that is guaranteed with interest that's compounded, that's always going to be there. Nobody can take that away from you. And I got to tell you, I have never heard of this before, and I'm sold on it. I really am. I am.
Judge Janine, you said so much there. Let's unpack a couple things. First of all, let's start with Wall Street and the Wall Street casino that you speak of. The audience listening and watching has to say, Judge Janine, you live in New York City. You live in, the epicenter of the financial district of the world. Surely you must know of some very effective and successful money managers and wealth strategists that could have helped you over the years. What do you say to that?
That is such a great question. And, it is such a great question. I have met so many of those men and women who are the wealth managers, who are the power brokers, who are the masters of the universe in New York City. But guess what? They lose too. All right. You look at this pandemic, you look at what's going on, and everything has come falling down. Humpty Dumpty is broken right now. The stock market is a joke. If you put your investments at the end of your life in the stock market like that, you could end up with nothing. And then who's going to take care of you? What money are you going to use? Nobody wants to hire you for the job that you used to have that you don't have the energy for anymore. And by the way, a lot of these people who are such high-flying money managers and, the masters of the universe, they're making money off of you. They're not looking to share it with you. They're making money off of you. And, you say New York City, and I have to tell you, New York City right now is falling apart. When you've got 272 police officers within 1 month, less than 1 month, who are retiring, you've got police afraid to go out on the street. You've got all kinds of arsonists and looters. And I'm not discussing the underlying issue. I'm discussing the reality of what is happening. When Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, the safest big city in the country for years, is looted, when you've got Chanel and Balmain and Sephora and Macy's, their biggest store, on Herald Square being destroyed, who's going to be making money in the city? What is the city now? As DA for me, when I was DA, one of my selling points was, because I was tough on crime, I would say to people, you need me, because when I'm tough on crime and I get rid of crime, then business can come in, business can prosper, families will move in, property rates will sustain themselves and go up. Real estate will be reliable. You see, when that is good, everything is good. But right now is a classic example. We've got the pandemic, we've got riots, we've got uncertainty, we can't even go back to work in New York City. So where are these masters of the universe now? And I don't care if you live in Podunk, Iowa. If you have the 100-year solution, your money is there unchanged, untouched. And that's what's great about it.
It is. It's fantastic. The 100-year savings solution has been around for over 160 years, and it's done everything that you've said it does every single year, regardless of what happens in Wall Street and in real estate. And before we go to real estate, because I know you've got a lot to say about that, let's go back to Wall Street. You call them the masters of the universe, and it's fascinating. I've been working with money for over 30 years, and I know that persona. They're very confident when they're selling you on performance and on managing your portfolio and growing your wealth. And I know you've been pitched a million times. I just know it, because that's just the nature of the business, right? And again, from the audience's perspective, they're like, but surely she had access to someone who was good and knew what was going on. But what I hear you saying, Judge, is, they made all these promises, but were they smart enough to tell you what could happen to your portfolio in case of this black swan event where there's a pandemic that closes the entire country, really the world, right?
Yeah.
And that Wall Street was going to be so affected where your portfolio is worth less than what you've put into it.
Right.
Why weren't they so smart to protect you from that?
Because it wasn't in their interest. It wasn't in their interest to paint the real world. It's in their interest to say, I am as good as the highest profit I have made, and I can put you in on that. And people buy into it. They don't say, look, this stock is only as good as it is if you sell it at the highest point. But you're not smart enough to sell it at the highest point. And they're not going to tell you, because chances are, you know, if they know it, they're going to save it for themselves. I think that in the end, this optimism that they try to exude and this confidence that you're talking about, Teresa, is more about their making money than making sure that you're comfortable and that you have a solid investment. It's about them, not you. They're selling themselves. And I think that if they knew that things were getting bad, I'm not so sure that they would tell you. But here's the point, the underlying point. The market is never guaranteed. And the Wall Street casino is, you're rolling the dice. I don't care if the guy behind the table looks like $1 million or if he looks like a schlep. It doesn't matter. The guy behind the table has nothing to do with it. It's a casino, and you're going to crap out sooner or later. Very rarely do people make money on that. And the pandemic and the looting and everything that's going on in the world has made that very clear. And if people go back to the stock market after this, they're dreamers. They're dreamers.
I think there's a place for investment risk. And we're not saying certainly that everybody on Wall Street is out to get your money necessarily, right? They don't have good intentions. I think there are a lot of people that have good intentions, but they're blinded by the whole philosophy and that whole game, right?
Right.
And
the optimism.
They have to be optimistic. If they were pessimistic, right, they wouldn't make money, because they would put you into products that don't make them a lot of money. For example, the 100-year savings solution. Why did it take you? This is a product that's been out there for over 160 years. And, you know, in the 70s or 80s, I have to look up the date, there was congressional hearings on this product. And there was testimony by Wall Street that came in and said, unfair. We can't compete against this product. Now, why? You being in the center of the financial district of the world, didn't anybody tell you, look, Judge Janine, you should put some of your money here and put some of your money in the 100-year savings solution, because it can protect you. It can give you guarantees. It can give you uninterrupted compounding. What a concept. And we can unwrap that, right? Because you hear uninterrupted compounding, you're like, what is that?
I never heard of it.
Heard of that,
I
right?
never heard of it. But that's the whole point. That's the whole point, that it's been around for so long, and yet we haven't heard about it, you know, because the people who are out there making money know that they've got a better shot at some of these riskier propositions. And that's why, as you say, in the 60s and the 70s, they were very much opposed to anything that involved a life insurance as kind of the basket, and then the additional, you know, compounding of interest, as well as, you know, the security. That principle is always protected.
Right.
And people just can't believe it when they hear it, because we're so used to saying, oh, well, really? Is that really true? It is. And it was so unquestionably questionable that they had to have hearings on it. When they did, they said, yeah, this is good. This is good. We can do this. But they don't want to do it. No one ever said to me, Janine, you should get involved in the 100-year savings solution. No one's ever said that to me. Why? It's the one solid thing that I can rely on.
Well, and unfortunately, I can answer that from their from their business model perspective, this does not fit in because of commissions. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the bottom line, right? It does not feed their business model. And we are the 100-year savings solution. We're in this for a 360 win. We want everybody to win, right? You can't have a business model where only one person wins and it work out, right? It can't be about the company winning, but the client not winning. It can't be about the insurance company losing, but the salesperson making a commission and winning. It has to be everybody winning. And that's one of our philosophies is that it's a 360 win. It's a win for the client. It's a win for the company. It's a win for everybody. If it's not a win for us, we can't stay in business and offer the 100-year savings solution.
So then someone would say, Teresa, someone would say, well, don't your people make a commission?
Of course we do. Of course the company has to make money. We have to make money. Why else would we be doing this?
Right.
But if we can offer you a product, Judge Janine, that gives you a higher return than what you're getting in your savings accounts, CDs, money market accounts. If we can give you guarantees backed by the life insurance company that has been around for over 100+ years, right? If we can give you more money for when you need long-term care or medical benefits or chronic illness benefits, right? Instead of you using your savings, we could give you access to more money so you can pay for those expenses and keep money in your savings. If for no other reason to give to your kids, who would you rather get your money, Judge Janine? A medical establishment, the government, or your family, or maybe a charity? I know you love your dogs, right?
Dogs, battered women.
Yeah, there's
all that stuff.
So many people who could use our money rather than the medical institution or the government. Mm-hmm. And with the 100-year savings solution, you can have it all. You know, one of our taglines is, your savings deserve more. You deserve more. Don't you deserve more? You've worked your butt off your entire life, right?
Yeah. And the frightening part of it is, Teresa, that when you work your butt off your entire life and you leave this incredibly important issue to people that you totally trust, but you really don't understand what's going on, and you don't make it your business to understand. You just kind of go along with the stock market or the money market or the CDs and the pitch and the optimism and you can't make this money again. You can't make it again. And, if you go into, long-term care or, we're so accustomed to living our life comfortably. We don't realize it can be taken away from us if we don't have the money we need, and we're living longer. That's the thing. We don't really think about, even though we have less life in front of us than behind us, but still, we may live well into our 90s. Mm-hmm. Do we have enough money to live that long? Are we going to be, in poverty by the time we're 85? Who thinks like this? We're not taught to think about this. And that's the sad part of it, Teresa. That's why I'm so thrilled about this.
And again, there are people that it might be appropriate for them to have investments. We're talking about carving out a piece of your savings, those dollars, those soldiers that we need to protect so they can protect you in the future, right? That's what I'm talking about. It may not be appropriate for someone to put all of their money into the 100-year savings solution. And it may be appropriate that they put a large amount of their money in the 100-year savings solution and not have exposure to risk. Because as we get older, as we said, you may not have the opportunity to make money. It's about preservation. The game changes. When you were younger, making your money, it was about accumulating and building up. And you can have more exposure to risk. But when you're older, it's about preservation.
Yep.
It's preserving those dollars safely and securely. I have this conversation with clients all the time, and they tell me, they show me where they've got their investments. And I say, call up your investment advisor. If we never speak again, this is what I want you to think about. Call your investment advisor and say, this is all the money that I have in the world. This money needs to take care of maybe a parent,
Yeah.
myself, a child who is special needs. It has to take care of my spouse. Are you telling me that the risk that you've got this money in is appropriate for what I need this money for? And most of the time, guess what happens, Judge Janine? That makes the investment manager like all of a sudden change their course. Well, why didn't they change the course before that conversation?
Yep.
Because that conversation makes them scared.
Yeah.
They make them think that the client now has access to information that can be a threat to what they're recommending.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. You know, that is excellent. And the idea that you actually put it to them that way. You know, I think people, women, men, whatever, that we don't think, you know, we just kind of assume they know what we're talking about. When you put it that way, you know, is there going to be enough money when I'm this age to take care of, you know, myself or my mother, or, you know, can you tell me or promise me? Whereas you can tell them what's going to be in that principle. You absolutely can.
They absolutely
cannot. And I know
can.
what you're saying, that you may want to supplement what you have with those other issues, that with those other options, I should say. Yeah, because everybody does sooner or later. But when it's later, I think you got to be a little more realistic about risking. You have to be risk averse. You cannot afford to lose your money. You can't make the money again. You can't.
Every dollar is a soldier. Every single dollar is important. Every soldier needs somebody protecting it so it can protect and work for you, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So let's talk about predators for a moment. And we've been talking about Wall Street as a predator, and let's assume that they have our best intentions. But, you know, revealing a little bit of Wall Street for a moment, just to have that conversation and put a bow on it for today. You know Madison Avenue. You're also in New York City with Madison Avenue. And some of us have watched Mad Men, and
Yes.
right? How fascinating.
Yep.
Well, you know, Wall Street uses Madison Avenue to sell their product. They're just selling product, and they're advertising, and they know how we are influenced, how people are wired when it comes to investing. And they're using our emotions, greed and fear, so similar to the casino industry, right? The casino industry knows the same.
Fascinating.
It's the same wiring, right? It's the same neurology. And one thing about the casinos, Judge Janine, that you may not be familiar with, you know, when you go to casino, you're given chips, and the chips help you separate from your money, right? If you walked into a casino and put down your house key, or the title to your mortgage, or your car, or, you know, your bank account statement, do you think people would really bet everything that they're betting?
No.
There's a separation with the chips. The same thing with Wall Street. Isn't that interesting?
That is
They're just
fascinating.
numbers on a statement, right?
Yep.
And you're like looking at your statement, and there are times that people don't look at their statements because they're afraid. And they're like, it's just a number. There's a separation.
Yep.
Wall Street,
It's like when you use a credit card versus actually having to take cash to pay for something. The credit card's easy. It doesn't hurt. The cash hurts.
They know that works. They know exactly how our neurology works, right? Our psychology to separate us from our money. And so walking around at this point, right, at our ages, we've got to walk around and say, all right, who's the predator that wants access to our money? It could be Wall Street. It could be the credit card companies. It could be the banks, you know, the pathetic rates that the banks offer in the name of savings, right? CDs, tying up our money forever, right? So we can look at that as a predator, so to speak, right? And again, those are products. It's not necessarily with bad intentions, but they're a threat to us and our financial security. And we've got to own that. We have to be empowered by that now. Relationships. Sometimes our kids want to separate us from our money. Sometimes our parents want to separate us from our money. Sometimes our boyfriends and our loved ones and our partners, right? You said as a DA, you saw that happen quite often. What about your friends and in your social circle? Have you seen that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've seen it. Look, as DA, I saw horrific examples of it. For example, I remember there was a woman who, she was a senior citizen, and she actually signed her mortgage over to this guy who was a con guy. He was a little younger, much better looking, and she ended up losing her house. And she was about, I don't know, 78 years old. And the shame of it is that, some of these economic crimes can be as painful as physical crimes. I mean, she had nothing. She had nothing. She did it voluntarily. She did it. It was an affair of the heart. And there was no way to prosecute him. I mean, there are others who allege that, I'm this, that, the other thing, and give me your money and I'll invest it here. And then they don't invest it there. Then you've got a fraud going on, a continuing fraud. But I know I have girlfriends who given money to boyfriends, and the boyfriends say they're going to pay him back, and they never pay him back. They're in the middle of a problem. Affairs of the heart can never, ever be mingled with your pocketbook. And it is unfortunate, but it's a reality of what happens. And it shows how we're kind of taught not so much to fight for our money. It's like, we don't, like you talk about soldiers, we don't recognize how many soldiers we actually need to survive. We can't give our strength away. We can't give our money away. And we're easy touches when it comes to the emotional involvement. When it comes to the con man, or telemarketing, or all that stuff that happens, the internet, we lose our money in a lot of ways. If we can hang on to our money in a way that's smart, that's not risky, that is, as you say, risk averse, that requires it to be there. I mean, that's the best of all worlds. I mean, why wouldn't we want that?
Why wouldn't we? Indeed, especially now that we know about it, right? Especially now that we know about it. When it comes to affairs of the heart, those are very, very difficult, right, to separate. And I had a girlfriend years ago who got involved with someone, and she lost a significant amount, over 7 figures, with this gentleman. And over the last 10 years, she's been getting paid back, but trickles. She was very lucky. Her brother's an attorney, and so he got involved, right? But it's not only the dollars, it's the emotional
exhaustion and all that,
and psychological exhaustion. It's the wear and tear on the heart. It's the shame. There's so much more than just the bank account, right? There's so much more.
It's the shame, and it's a betrayal of trust. And when you can't trust, you don't enjoy life as much. Right. We always have that kind of like carefree and but when you've been betrayed, it's hard to have that again.
And we're not talking about dumb women. We're talking about very smart, professional, accomplished people that this happens to. And I think there's more shame with that, right? Because if I'm so smart and I'm so accomplished, how could I be so dumb over here? Like, how could I have been taken so for granted over here? And so one of the strategies that I encourage my single clients to use, male and female, because this can happen to both, it's not just the females, is to set either an accountability person, it could be an attorney, it could be a CPA, but set your investments in a way where there's a bad cop already integrated into your planning. So when this lover, this partner, this investment person comes up and is pitching you, it's not just your will, it's I now have somebody that I have and that I'm accountable to.
Yeah.
And I've got an estate set up where they can't have access to all of it because there's a bad cop already built in.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the strategies that I've recommended to clients for a very, very long time, because we are all We are all vulnerable at different
No
times in
question.
our life. And those predators know exactly when to hit, don't they?
Oh, they certainly do.
Very
And those
interesting.
predators understand with some women, it's incredibly important for them to have a man in their lives. And they can smell it. They can just smell when a woman is desperate and they know when to hit. Yes, they definitely know when to hit. I know there was a woman, actually a friend of mine, who invested all kinds of money into the house of a boyfriend, and
Mm.
thinking that eventually she'd have her name on the deed and all that. Nope. She left and he said sorry. And it was too bad. It really was very sad. Smart women. It's like battered women, the extremely bright women, a woman who ends up getting battered. The shame is so great, she's the last person to complain about it. And with battering, it just gets worse and worse. It increases in intensity and severity as time goes on, and they say less and less. And I think that with a lot of women economically, they're emotionally battered by these guys who say, I need money for this, I need money for that. You've got all this money, I'm going to take care of you, it's going to be great. Hope springs eternal, but man, if it sounds too good to be true, it is, and you know it. We all know.
Yes.
But do you have
Yes.
to, Teresa, do you have to get to a certain age to know it? That's the thing.
Well, you don't have to, but it seems like you do, right? It
Yeah,
just
yeah.
seems that the older we get, gosh, I wouldn't trade my wisdom for youth.
Oh,
I'd like both. If I could have wisdom and youth, but doesn't quite work that way. It
it
doesn't
doesn't.
quite work that
It
way.
doesn't.
So, Judge Janine, share with us a little bit. I know, our audience is probably really curious about, from a social circle perspective, the people that you hang out with. Do they talk about money? Do they talk about their finances?
No,
So
no,
it's
not at all.
no
Not at all. It's an
conversation.
interesting question. No one's ever asked me that question before. Uh, you know, women, we're talking about my women friends for the most part.
Women, men, professionals?
Uh, I think everybody's almost embarrassed to talk about their own finances with other friends that they think may have more or think that they have so much. I've never had a conversation. I've had conversations with my women friends that I can't repeat. We all have. But does anyone talk about money? No. Does anyone come in and say, you're not going to believe how I hit it today? It's money is like this. It's not that it's untouchable. It's just, it's something that people aren't comfortable talking about, whether they're ashamed or whether they think people think they have more than they have, or whether they're afraid that they have too much and they don't want other people to, hit on them for money. Money is not a conversation that you have. Someone might say, I got it tough these days, things are tough. Everybody during this pandemic, everybody's dropped. And it doesn't matter what level you're at. It doesn't matter if you're at the top, everybody's dropped several levels. But discussing money, and if we had discussed it more, and I don't know why it's so taboo, but if we discussed money more, I think we'd be smarter about it. We'd learn from each other. We'd learn about investing. We'd learn about, what we should do and the mistakes that others have made. We're just very quiet about it. I don't know why. Do you know why?
Well, I think, the very wealthy have a persona that they have to express in the world. They have to navigate the world with that persona. And I think that's a very, very big part of it. I see behind the curtains, I see the numbers. We work with middle America and very wealthy. The 100-year savings solution really works for anybody that has money in savings and they want something better. But looking behind the numbers, so to speak, it's amazing how wealthy people don't like to lose. They might have a whole lot of money, what most people would say is a whole lot of money. But when something like the pandemic happens and their numbers go down, they stress out about money. just like
Yes.
normal
Yes.
people do.
Yes.
There's a
Everybody.
lot of anxiety about money. There's a lot of focus about money, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And lifestyle, they worry about lifestyle. Is my lifestyle going to change?
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
because
Indeed.
of XYZ. Can I leave enough to my kids if that's important to them?
Right.
So just because, you know, they might have more zeros in their net worth
Yeah.
doesn't change for most people the stress and the anxiety
I
and the
absolutely agree.
self-talk about money.
I absolutely agree. But is it your experience that people with money, I mean, women also don't talk about it?
Well, they talk about it with me.
Yeah.
So I
I talk
don't
about
know
it with
that.
you too.
Yeah, they talk about it with me, and I don't know that they talk about it with their friends. I know there's a lot of shame about, you know, the predators, and I know that stuff that they may not talk about.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking of a woman, you know, one of my clients for a very, very long time, and you know, it was so interesting. She's a brilliant businesswoman, an investor in real estate. Boy, did she research the 100-year savings solution up and down, sideways, backwards, every which way. And she positioned a good amount of money into the 100-year savings solution. And then she was taken advantage of with different investments in her real estate. And her net worth has dropped significantly. And oh my gosh, Judge Janine, my heart went out to her. And she is, you know, our age, and she has a lot less to work with now. And this was a woman who built a significant portfolio. And what was so striking to me was the shame, the emotional toll that it took on her. And these weren't predators per se. These were just investments that she made that went sour.
Yeah.
But when you get to a point, when you get to an age where, like we talked about, the conversation should be, or the focus should be more about preservation than it
Yep.
is about taking risk and accumulation and
Can't
growth.
take risks. You cannot.
Because you can't make it up. You can't make
You
it up the same
can't.
way.
It's like saying I'm good without a third of my assets. No, I'm not. In fact, I want more. And that's why I'm so sold on this
And the 100-year savings solution.
100-year saving solution. Works for me.